Hey everyone, I'm Jack, and in today's video, I'll be ranking the bosses of Visceral Games' Dead Space 2 from worst to best. Following our Dead Space and Dead Space Remake boss rankings, we move on to Dead Space 2, one of the great gaming sequels of our time. Although, to me, Dead Space 2 isn't just a sequel, but an improvement on its predecessor, as in my experience, it has much stronger horror than Dead Space 2008, and a superior narrative through much clearer storytelling. It still keeps up the combat-heavy gameplay featured in the original, but in my opinion, improves on it, introducing a broader range of weapons, reinvented Zero-G, and a newly designed stasis and rig system. While the argument over which game in the Dead Space series is the best is one for another time, I'll leave it at that I had a much better understanding of what was happening and why it was happening in Dead Space 2, and like Dead Space Remake, clearing up the confusion Dead Space 2008 created through its subtle, exploration-oriented storytelling with the direct exposition instead, was a smart move that improved the overall experience. Like the original, Dead Space 2 isn't particularly boss-centric, but has enough to justify a ranking, and this time around I think the hierarchy of boss quality is a bit clearer, but still very open to interpretation at large. As we have, and will continue to reiterate in every video, Alex and I now have a Patreon with great rewards at every tier. For example, at $25 a month, we'll give you our PSNs and Steam usernames, and we can play a couple matches of an online game with you monthly, like Overwatch 2, Team Fortress 2, or even Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2. I've been playing it a lot recently. Shout out Jackalaxana. As well, we have a Discord server, a TikTok, and an Instagram, all linked in the description below. Without further ado, let's get into the ranking. As I've gotten more exposed to a wider spectrum of games thanks to this channel, I've been lucky, or unlucky enough, to play through a decent amount of pretty bad final bosses. The obvious ones that come to mind would be Titan Joker from Arkham Asylum, Frank Fontaine from BioShock, or Malice from Shadow of the Colossus. But, and I don't really know if this analogy makes sense, but like a bull who just got flashed by Darth Maul sprinting into a crowd of innocent bystanders, the marker from Dead Space 2 enters that conversation as a final boss that was so fucking bad, I don't even think of it as a boss battle, like in my head. In the marker's defense, it really does meet the bare minimum requirements for me to even consider it a boss, but due to the lack of major enemy encounters across the Dead Space games, I wasn't pulling any hairs over this decision. I was pulling my hair from pure raw fucking rage at the baffling design choices made with this finale, however. During the era of planet cracking, EarthGov found many markers across the galaxy. These markers were notorious for sparking disastrous convergence events, which occurred when enough organic matter became infected by that marker's necromorph pathogen. The Site-12 marker was built by Isaac Clarke, Nolan Strauss, and 3 others led by director Hans Tiedemann, and was the result of Isaac and Nolan's spurts of insanity that occurred throughout chapters 1 through 15. It was also the main MacGuffin of the narrative alongside Isaac. The Unitologists wanted to use Isaac to build more markers like 12B, EarthGov wanted to harness the marker's infinite energy pool to put an end to planet cracking, and Isaac wanted to destroy it to get rid of his hallucinations of Nicole, stop the spread of the necromorph infection, and try to put an end to his gradual mental decline resulting from marker-induced dementia. All fine and dandy, but the fight itself is still pretty fucking bad. The build-up was fantastic. In a last stand, Tiedemann, badly burned with his skull showing, shoots multiple javelin spears through Isaac until Isaac overpowers him. Isaac is then overcome by the marker and enters a dystopian dream state, where an apparition of Nicole attempts to make him give in. This is all followed by brief combat sections where Nicole slowly waddles towards you with open arms. I assume if she touches you, you die, but I never managed to do so. Alongside Nicole, an infinite stream of the Pack, already one of the most frustrating necromorph subgroups in the game, spawn from all sides infinitely, and all the while Isaac has impaired vision. After damaging Nicole enough, the marker opens up and reveals a central heart, which you lay off every round of ammo into over, and over, and over, and over, and fucking over again. Once done, Isaac escapes the dream sequence and Titan shortly thereafter, leaving behind one of the worst bosses in the Dead Space series in what was a terrible conclusion to a fantastic game. The Ubermorph is near identical to the Hunter from Dead Space 2008. It's a stalker-esque figure that follows you through multiple chapters and is unkillable due to its ability to rapidly regenerate limbs an infinite number of times. So, why, unlike the Hunter, is the Ubermorph not particularly enjoyable? There are multiple reasons, all of which I'll cover shortly. The Ubermorph is a necromorph of unknown origin, but based on its physical attributes, is theorized to be an early-stage evolution of the Hive Mind. It led the necromorph raid on the EarthGov station, and Isaac first encounters the five-eyed creature early in Chapter 14 after his self-induced eye surgery. From this point, the Ubermorph constantly reappears, following Isaac into combat arenas, tight corridors, and long hallways, rendering exploration a useless waste of resources. Its first fault. Second, the Ubermorph is noticeably faster than the Hunter and regenerates its limbs so quickly that using ammo on it is pointless. When trying to balance combat between necromorphs and the Ubermorph, getting hurt is almost guaranteed, and it's best to simply avoid combat arenas altogether and sprint to the marker as quickly as possible. Strike 2. And lastly, in a 2-for-1 complaint, I found that the Ubermorph was much more resistant to stasis than other necromorphs even at maximum duration. With that, you're never able to kill the Ubermorph, it simply follows you up to the marker's convergence point and presumably dies in the sprawl's collapse afterwards, with no evidence proving that true or not. The Ubermorph is a frustrating reinterpretation of a great mini-boss, and due to its poor mechanical design falls to the back end of this ranking. The only boss from Dead Space to carry over into its sequels, Brutes reappear with barely any difference but end up a spot higher than previous due to reasons already stated. I won't go into exceptional detail on Brutes as I'd be essentially copying my script and Alex's script from our previous 2 Dead Space videos, so if you want a thorough rundown on these hulking creatures, check those videos out. That said, stasis, stasis, stasis. Just as in Dead Space, enhanced brutes are tougher opponents with the same strategy, but they drop better rewards in this game by comparison. Brutes are great fun, have a unique trophy unlock, and consistently add excitement to the combat when they make a rare appearance. After fighting through your run-of-the-mill necromorphs, leapers, and lurkers in Chapter 1, at the very end Isaac runs into a gigantic 3-legged creature dubbed a tripod, a horrifying mass of human corpses with weak spots on each of its elbows and a protruding tongue with one as well. Tripods make many appearances in the early and mid-game, most notably the initial encounter at the end of Chapter 1 and the elevator bit in Chapter 7. The Nest, I ranked separately. Spoiler alert. They have a wide range of basic melee attacks and even use their tongue to finish off combo strings, but their most dangerous move is the jump, dealing massive damage and knocking Isaac to the ground. Although, once again, stasis is the obvious solution that removes any tension from this encounter. I've known a few tripods in my time on this earth, but seeing as I am a straight man, none were as enjoyable for me as Dead Space 2's 3-legged necromorph. The Tripod Nest marks the beginning of Dead Space 2's endgame for me, even with it being only the finale to Chapter 9 of 15 total. In their direst hour, Isaac, Elise, and Strauss's tram gets caught in a mesh of corruption. The only way to free the tram is through the destruction of this mass, which is soon after revealed to be a nest, and not just any nest, but the creation center for tripods. The Tripod Nest has a destructible battery in it, which is destroyed via explosive canisters that spawn on either side of the arena. However, there's a catch. With each detonation, a newly formed tripod emerges, forcing you to fight while also damaging the heavily armored battery. That is, unless you outright don't kill the tripod that spawns in and continuously use stasis on the creature to keep it at bay. My stasis had pretty average duration upgrades, so this wasn't the best strategy for me. I instead opted to just use stasis once, break a limb, use a canister, kill the tripod, then repeat, but you can practically skip this entire segment with max stasis, turning it from a challenge to a chore. Still, once you destroy the battery, you need to escape. I died at first because I couldn't find the exit, but should you claw your way out, you leave the sprawl only to realize your next destination. The USG Ishimura. With no doubt in my mind, Dead Space 2's most cinematic boss encounter is by far its most rewarding. The Tormentor wasn't just my favorite boss in Dead Space 2, but my favorite of all the admittedly few boss battles in the Dead Space trilogy. I tried to make it sound nice. While the Leviathan had spectacle and scale, and the moon was, well, a moon, the Tormentor has the perfect blend of cinematic flair and interactive design, a benchmark for what the major enemy encounters in the Dead Space series should be. When Isaac finally reaches Dana after crawling through the Sprawl and Titan Station Unitology Church, it's revealed that she was, surprise, playing a character and using Isaac to get him from one spot to another. It's like Star Wars. Is there anyone with good intentions in this universe? Anyways, Dana reveals herself as a unitologist, aiming to use Isaac to construct more markers like the gigantic Marker 12B. This all comes to an abrupt end when an EarthGov gunship massacres Dana and the other unitologists, allowing Isaac to escape. After falling through an exit hatch, the gigantic Tormentor emerges from the shadows, a lanky, dooming presence with an incredibly intimidating design. Viewers of this channel may know that high-octane QuickTime bosses are my Achilles heel with rankings. Usually they aren't the best fights from an objective lens, but for me, I always have the most fun with them. The Tormentor has 3 distinct phases, the first being a drag tentacle shootout among a pile of rubble. This was the least intense for me as I had a decent amount of practice from Dead Space, but it was still difficult at times and fun nonetheless. The second phase is a chase, and let me be the first to say, don't look back. All you need to do is use Kinesis to move a sliding door, then run outside, leading to the conclusion. After escaping the Tormentor briefly, Isaac gets cornered by the EarthGov gunship yet again. The gunship then breaks the building's protective windows, opening it up to the vacuum of space and in turn removing all sound. This added levels to this last phase. The only audible noises are the screams of Isaac and the intense grunts and pounding of the Tormentor on the ship's hull, as Isaac and the Necromorph fight on its metal frame. How do you survive this seemingly inescapable death trap? By blowing up a canister in your face, of course, demolishing the ship and the Tormentor with it while sending Isaac back into the apocalyptic sprawl, from one nightmare to another. The Tormentor was by far the best single sequence in Dead Space 2, and as a boss fight in a game with very few, was a greatly enjoyable standout among the otherwise non-existent crowd. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope you enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't, and if you'd like to, check out our Patreon, linked in the description below. That's all for now. Deuces.